Hello, F2 Fan 5000 here, going to review the 2025 Hungarian round of the FIA Formula 2 Championship. The thing that stood out for me the most this weekend is team orders and how strong the Invicta team look. You just have to look at the points that Roman Stanek has scored in the last couple of years. He scored a lot more points in the last two race weekends than he has in the last 2 years combined. That's quite a stat. That's the difference in teams in Formula 2. Of course, Roman found his form in F3 in his third season, so it's a little bit of that as well. Nonetheless, excellent execution by the team, and it's changed the order at the top of the standings. That's on the back of disqualifications last time out. Let's go to the driver ratings. Leonardo Fornaroli, he gets a 9 out of 10. I don't know what else he could have done more, but the disappointing part of his weekend was in qualifying, when he's had a lap time deleted due to track limits, and he's finished second on the road in terms of qualifying to his teammate when Fornaroli's the more highly rated driver. However, I think Fornaroli had the speed in him. It was the exit. It was that strange strategy he had of going out by himself. You know, I also think he did well because he put in the banker lap, and then in the sprint race, he made up a couple of places, and then in the feature race, the thing that stood out for me is when he came out of the pits a long way in front of Roman Stanek, because Roman Stanek was well ahead of him before they pitted, and the offset was only about one lap, and Fornaroli's come out a long way ahead. And he obviously received a time penalty, 5 seconds, for speeding in the pit lane. But I don't think that fully explains what happened. So, was Fornaroli saving for his in-lap? It's possible. Obviously, he came steaming into the pit lane very quickly and had to scrub off speed. Yeah, I think it's possible that he was saving for that moment, which if it is, then maybe he deserves more than a 9. But I'm going to give him a 9 because coming to Roman Stanek, he's had a sensational weekend. He's the best driver this weekend. I'll give him a 10. He's been on absolute fire the last few race weekends. If only he'd had a good car, a good team earlier in his F2 career, things might have been different for Stanek. But the thing I want to highlight is, so in the sprint race he hasn't scored any points because of a collision where he got tapped, spun around, went to the back. In the feature race, his ability in holding up Jack Crawford is excellent, and I would say he played the team game. But he looked to be the quickest driver all weekend, and he's not that highly rated, so I think that's a fabulous weekend from Roman Stanek. I'll give Pepe Marti a 6 out of 10. He won the sprint race. He held off Alex Dunn. However, in the feature race, he's finished in 10th place. That's where the big points are handed out. It's a solid weekend for Pepe Marti, but I'd like to see him do more to challenge Arvid Lindblad in the feature, and he's not doing that. He's just a bit average, I'll have to say. Lindblad has been the more impressive driver, and when you consider the big difference in experience, that's not a good look for Pepe Marti. And then Arvid Lindblad, I'll give him an 8 out of 10. I'm very impressed with his defensive skills. I'm not 100% sure of the penalty that he received. He made the reverse strategy work well in the feature race as well for 6th place. A good result. He passed the eye test. All weekend he looked competitive, and to me that's probably the best way of judging the driver. He's always been either very good defence or he's been on a charge. And then Oliver Goethe gets a 7 out of 10. And I'd say tentative. He's had a good weekend for once. He's had a lot of bad weekends, hasn't it? But he was a strong driver in F3. I don't know why he struggled in F2 so much this year. And now we've seen him out-qualify Richard Verschoor. He's had a good weekend. He looked quicker than Richard Verschoor for most of the weekend. However, in the feature race, he faded to 8th. But he made a silly mistake when in the end of the VSC where he's locked up and gone off the road trying to overtake Arvid Lindblad in a move that was never on, that was never going to be an overtake, and he's just lost a position there for no good reason at all. And Richard Verschoor, I'll give him a 5.5 out of 10. I got to say, I thought Richard Verschoor would be doing better since Austria, and I made a video about, Richard Verschoor, look out for Richard Verschoor, and, he should be on the radar for F1, and he's just been average. He's just been, so he used a reverse strategy to recover to 5th in the feature race, but he's a 5th season driver. I thought he'd be up on the podium. 5th place, to me, at his stage, is not good enough. He's a very good driver. I like his attitude. He's got a lot of heart, but that's just not good enough the last couple of race weekends, and this is good, but not good enough, and I'll give him a 5.5, because even though this race weekend is fairly good, you have to match it with expectations, and Richard Verschoor has higher expectations than, a 19 or 20-year-old in their first or second season. Coming to Luke Browning, he gets a 7.5 out of 10. Luke Browning gets a 7.5 out of 10. He's consistently in good points all the time. He got some penalty for sprint race and dropped out of the points. Silly stuff, but they penalise hard racing. And of course, these tracks have wide runoff. You probably shouldn't overtake off the track, but he deserved points in the sprint, and then in the feature race, he was never that far behind the battle for second place between Roman Stanek and Jack Crawford. Dino Beganovic, he gets a 6 out of 10. Once again, a poor qualifying for a former FRECA champion. It's not very inspiring at all. Sorry, that's all I can say. I know he's had a good feature race, but once he came to the back of Arvid Lindblad, you remember I said I gave Arvid Lindblad an 8 out of 10, look at the defensive skills. Well, when it comes to Dino Beganovic, he's on a charge, comes to the back of Lindblad, and that's the end of his charge. 7th place is decent. In the sprint race, he got a point or two because of penalties and stuff, but nothing overly impressive. Gabriele Mini, I'm sorry to say, but he's going to get a 1 out of 10, an absolute weekend to forget. In fact, I don't know why I'm giving him 1. And Sebastian Montoya gets a 3 out of 10. Since after Silverstone, the wheels have come off for Sebastian Montoya. He was on a charge, and now he's back to his F3 self, and it's very disappointing. And Gabriele Mini is probably the disappointment of the season. He put it on pole at the round in Australia, Melbourne. Looked quick. Since then, he's been off the pace, and this was a terrible weekend and made mistakes. Yeah, I don't know how much of that is the fault of Prema, how much is the fault of the drivers, but there's a terrible weekend for Prema and terrible weekend for the drivers. Moving on to dams, Jack Crawford, he gets an 8 out of 10. He's got a double podium. He's always strong in the race pace. I think he looked very quick, but I don't think he ever had the pace to overtake Roman Stanek. Now, if Stanek wasn't there, would he have caught and passed Leonardo Fornaroli? Who knows? And Kush Miney gets a 5 out of 10. Another very anonymous weekend, although in the feature race, I think he's made up a lot of places. So I'll give him a 50% mark. Alex Dunn, sorry, you get a 5 out of 10. I'd give you less, but you had a couple of nice overtakes in the sprint race. Your qualifying is pretty poor. No pace, back to F3 levels, and then in the feature race, goes missing, gets stuck behind Goethe for the race. Never looked like a threat to move forward from hero to zero, basically. But the sprint race, because he got on the podium, had some nice overtakes, I'll give him a 5 out of 10. Omri Cordell gets that's a tough one. I'll just give him a 5 out of 10 because his car broke down. That's not his fault. It's always heartbreaking for a driver when their car breaks down. Out-qualified by Alex Dunn again. No pace, fourth season driver. But, you can't blame someone for the car breaking down. So, ART, Victor Martins gets a 5.5 out of 10. Third season driver, I'd like to see more from him. He's got points in the sprint race, and it's not his fault that the car broke down in the feature race. A very good qualifier, although I think this weekend even he couldn't match the speed of the Invicta pair. Pretty heartbreaking. And Ritomo Miyata, I'm sorry, but he gets a 2 out of 10 from hero to zero. Once again, excellent in Spa-Francorchamps in the wet, and here he's missing once again, qualifying who knows where. Anonymous in the race at the back with Esterson and Shields. AIX, Joshua Dirksen. Dirksen gets a 7.5 out of 10. It's honestly a little bit heartbreaking. I think AIX, I don't think are much of a team. Having said that, Shields hasn't been that bad. So, but still, I feel like Dirksen is dragging a lousy car as far as he can, and he's just not getting the results. So it's funny because people talk about Oliver Behrman in Formula One finishing 11th 4 times in a row, and Dirksen finished 11th 3 times in a row. Then I think he was 12th, so it's 11, 11, 11, 12. But it's not really. I'm laughing about it, but it's very disappointing because I think Dirksen is a much better driver than he's able to show in the AIX. I think that team was good when they had Dirksen and Barnard. Obviously, Dirksen was ahead of Barnard, but Taylor Barnard is a very talented driver. I don't know what he brought to the team, but this season without him, they're hopeless, if I'm being honest, hopeless. And Chan Shields gets a 6 out of 10. Shields has a terrible reputation. He's a Niels Coulin level driver. He's a Niels Coulin, Raghunathan, this level driver apparently, and yet he's been holding on to the back of the pack, and I think in this race he's ahead of a couple of the drivers. I think for a driver, considering his skills and the AIX car, I think 6 out of 10 is what Chern Shields deserves. It's Trident Sami Megatunov. He gets a 7 out of 10. Nah, it's a little bit generous. A 6.5. He gets a 6.5 out of 10 to Sami Megatunov. I think he had some pace there now and then in the feature race, attacking for points, but it fell away. And Max Esterson, he gets a 1 out of 10. He looked slow all weekend. He never looked in the fight for anything. He's behind Chern Shields. I don't know what he's doing, as Esterson. I thought he'd be better than that. I suppose he's a rookie, but he's already 24. I'm expecting more from Esterson. I don't know if he's going to do a second season either. John Bennett, I'll give John Bennett a 7 out of 10. I feel bad for John Bennett. He's trying his best to try and get to the points, and I feel he's just been punted off the road. Not his fault. Rafael Villagomez gets a 5 out of 10. Van Amersfoort is not the best team, and Villagomez is not the fastest driver. But for me, the story this weekend was the Invicta team and just that pit stop. I feel like I saw the laws of physics being defied. Fornaroli comes out of the pits and you're like, hang on, how did he get in front of Roman Stanek? It's only a 1 lap difference. So I feel like it's a mixture of I don't know, because you don't get pit stop times in Formula 2. Yeah, the TV people don't love Formula 2 enough to give us the times of the pit stops. Speeding in the pit lane, I don't think he gained anything much from that. I think that was like he's scrubbing off the speed as he comes into the pits. It's good to see drivers doing that, We want to see people competing at 110% all the time, not just, trundling around or driving within themselves. But I think he might have saved the tyres. But that was the moment of the weekend. Alex Dunn had, he brought the fire to the sprint race, but went missing in the feature race. But in the sprint race, I know Hungary Ring is not easy to overtake, but I've got to match that with the fact that he was poor in qualifying. He's just nowhere, and it's so obvious. It's about getting the setup right for these cars. Look where this Roden team were in Spa, and look what Alex Dunn could do in Spa-Francorchamps. And unfortunately, he doesn't get the points for that. As for Leonardo Fornaroli's first feature race win, I don't mind that he got help from Roman Stanek, because I think team orders were a large part of it. I think Stanek knows that he's out of any championship fight, and his teammate is, so why not? He's got nothing to lose to Stanek, but he's got nothing to gain either. He's not in the championship fight, though he's in the top 10 of the standings now. Again, amazing what a difference the team makes, but the thing about Stanek is that he's very gracious to do that. But the thing also about Fornaroli, I feel as though he's lost out before in Austria with the pit stop phases. At Imola, obviously, I don't think he would have won Imola, but he lost out in the pit stop phase. And Monte Carlo, Monaco, lost out with the safety car timing. And the other thing, the sprint race, I think would have been very exciting. And I think that safety car spoiled it. We had a really exciting race brewing. There was going to be a battle for the lead. I think Alex Dunn would have eventually prevailed. And the battle for the other places, with Lindblad's tyres going off, fighting against Luke Browning and Jack Crawford and Victor Martins, we were robbed of that. We got it, but then it was cut short, and then we got another couple of laps of it, but the drivers didn't get enough time to keep going and fighting with each other. Very disappointed there. I feel the safety car plays too much of a role in how these championships turn out, but overall another exciting weekend of Formula 2 action, and the championship's looking very exciting, and it looks like the top 5 in the championship currently. I'd be very surprised if someone else won this championship. With 4 rounds to go, I know it's possible, but considering how consistent a lot of these drivers are, I'd be very surprised if this championship is won by someone outside the top 5. And Fornaroli has a little cushion of 17 points to Jack Crawford, and then it's almost 30 points to Browning and Dunn. It's like 28, 29 points to those two back in 4th and 5th, which is a good buffer to have. I mean, the numbers I look at, the first number I look for is 25 or 26 perhaps, because that's the number of a feature race win plus 1 point for the fastest lap, 26. So it's very hard, I think, to take more than 25, 26 points out of a driver on a given weekend. So there's only 2 drivers within that bracket, a Fornaroli, and the second number I look at is 39, because that's the total amount of points you can score over a weekend. And there's only another 2 drivers within that distance of Fornaroli at the moment. And I think it's a big points gap from Alex Dunn in 5th place. Can't believe I'm saying he's in 5th place. Disqualifications, eh? But he's in 5th. He's got 124 points, and I think it's more than 25 points back to it's Pepe Marti or Arvid Lindblad in 6th place. But yeah, very exciting championship. But I'd like to see a little bit more domination, but I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing domination from a group of drivers. I think the drivers outside the top, the main ones are Fornaroli, Dunn, Crawford, Browning, for sure, though he has the off weekends. And then behind, then and the 2 Campos drivers, I think those 7 drivers are the ones that are doing the most of the point scoring, and Invicta Martins as well. So those 8 drivers, and then you get the likes of Bogdanovic, or he seems to come through for the minor points on the Sunday races. But yeah, those 8 drivers are the main point scorers. But still, I'd like to see like 2 or 3 drivers just start to dominate the podium every feature race, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that in Formula 2. I don't necessarily like it in other series, but we want fast young drivers to prove themselves. And I'm hoping we see that in the last 4 races.